Jennie Wade is best known as the only civilian to die as a direct result of the Battle of Gettysburg. But Mary Virginia Wade, or Jennie for short, was also known as a devoted daughter by her mother Mary, a loving sister, and a good friend. This was the home of Jennie's older sister, Georgia McClellan, who had given birth to a baby boy 4 days before the fighting began on June 26, 1863. This building was a double home, with Georgia occupying the north side shown here. When the battle began on July 1, 1863, Jennie was at her mother's home, taking care of her younger brother and a neighbor's child. Jennie's mother was staying at Georgia's home, helping with the new baby. With the battle intensifying from both west and north of town, Jennie felt it was safer to move the boys to her sister's home, 3 blocks to the south and further from the battle. This would also bring the family back together. Later that day, the Union Army was defeated and retreated past the home. Jennie spent hours pumping well water to the grateful soldiers. She also spent the night caring for the wounded men that lay scattered around the area. The haunted history of the house contains too many tales to tell you here. We will, however, present some of our favorite encounters. And as you'll find out, Jennie Wade's not the only spirit with ghostly tales here at the Jennie Wade House.
In the fall of 2003, a family that had purchased tickets for a Ghostly Images tour had a ghostly experience. While waiting out front for their adventure to begin, the youngest daughter, a spirited 7-year-old, was running around the statue of Jennie Wade. As the tour was about to begin, the father called for the child to join the group, but the girl ignored the call. A second time, Dad called out, "Let's go, no playing around," but the girl continued her activity. When the father finally had enough of this nonsense, he went over and took the little girl by the hand, but not before the girl called out, "Can the little boy come with me?" There was no little boy anywhere to be seen, at least not by the rest of the group that night.
Let's continue inside for more history and ghostly tales. The Confederate Army followed the retreating Yankees into Gettysburg and were positioned at the edge of town to the north, within view of Georgia's small home. The Union Army occupied high ground 200 yards to the south, with a small contingent of sharpshooters that were positioned around this brick structure. While the musket fire continued outside, the family gathered here in the parlor. Although the family was now trapped in the middle of all the action, they generally felt safe, protected by the sturdy brick walls. A bed had been brought downstairs months earlier as Georgia prepared to give birth. At the time, she was living here alone, while her husband was away fighting for the Union. In the morning of July 2nd, 1863, as the family prepared for another day of uncertainty, an artillery shell struck the roof of the building. It crashed through the second-story brick wall and into the neighbor's home. Fortunately, the shell did not explode, but the stress and anxiety of the event caused Jennie to faint. She'd already suffered from exhaustion with little sleep during the 2 days she spent caring for her family and soldiers.
The little girl who had seen the boy at the statue had gone on the walking portion of the tour and was now here inside the house for the rest of the evening. While she sat on the couch, the guide continued with another ghost story. Suddenly the girl called out, "Mommy, would you ask the little boy not to hold my ankle so tight?" Once again, as everyone in the group turned to look, there was no little boy. The mother asked, "What are you talking about?" And she says, "The little one that was playing with me around the statue. He followed me on the rest of the tour and now he's here with me and he's holding on really tight to my ankle. Could you please tell him to stop?" At that point, the mother picked up the little girl to move on.
Another interesting story happened here in the parlor in January of 2003. It seems that ghosts are not happy when you change their environment. If you have a home and you remodel it, watch out. The spirits may not be happy.
On in January of 2003, a maintenance man was here in the house and decided he was going to repaint the parlor ceiling. So as he was getting prep work done one day, he moved all the small items into the kitchen, moved everything else in the middle of the room, covered everything in plastic. He headed out for the day when he glanced back into the parlor and realized that the globe sitting on top of the lamp behind me next to the front door was still sitting. Well, he decided to come in, take it off his lamp, and place it on top of the mantelpiece for safekeeping until he'd find a safe place for it the next day. He left for the night, and when he came back the next morning, he walked in the door and looked off to his right and was quite surprised to see what was the globe was now broken to a million pieces all over the floor on the other side of the room, a distance of almost 15 feet. No one had been here the night before, but somehow it traveled all the way across and broke all over the floor. Now, a very similar story happened that almost a little over a year later, when it was a ghost tour. It was a female guide that night, had just finished the evening tour, and she brought everybody inside the house and just finished telling several stories here in the parlor when she moved everybody into the kitchen. While she was telling some things that happened in the kitchen to a group of people, she was shocked to the sound of shattering glass behind her here in the parlor. Quickly turning around, she found one of the hurricane lamp globes sitting on the floor in the same corner. The other one had broken a year prior. That was shattered all over the floor itself. Well, several people in the tour reportedly said what they saw was the globe actually hovered about 4 feet over the ground before it just dropped and then shattered. And needless to say, those people decided not to continue the tour for the rest of the evening and called it a night. Now, another strange occurrence that happens here in the parlor is with the rocking chair that sits in the corner. It's been known quite frequently to rock on its own. During one day tour, it was just a regular history, and the group was here in the parlor, and all of a sudden the chair began to rock on its own with no one near it. One gentleman decided to stand here and stay and watch, while the rest of the group quickly left the room, and he said it rocked almost an entire 5 minutes without anybody even touching it.
During a ghost investigation in the spring of 2003, 4 photographs were taken within 20 seconds with a 35mm camera. The results of those photographs are both surprising and amazing. Note in these photos that in the first photo there appears to be nothing unusual. However, in the next 3, there is an unexplained dark shadow that moves from left to right. There is nothing between the camera and the opposite wall to create the image. If you look closely, you will see that the shadow cannot be from the outside, since it is seen on the wall and the curtain.
Back in February of 2003, we allowed a ghost investigative group from Western Pennsylvania to come here to the Jennie Wade House and spend the night. They set up their command center here in the parlor, and during the course of the evening, I was here along with my wife and the lead investigator. We discussed the many hauntings here at the Jennie Wade House during that time. The other investigators were spread out throughout the house collecting their data, and occasionally would report in here with any findings or evidence and get their next assignments. During the course of the evening, they had set a tape recorder up in the corner of the room. It just ran all night long, getting our voices, any background sounds, the voices of the investigators. And the next day, to their surprise, when they played that tape back, they found an additional voice, a voice of someone who was not here that evening, at least not here from our side. They were able to take that tape, download it onto a laptop computer, and eventually filter out all the background sounds and all the other voices. And at that time they realized that they had captured a voice from the other side, the voice of a small child. They also printed out a decibel level, and that clearly showed that the decibel level reached by that voice was not from this world. It was way off the charts for anything a human voice could possibly reach. We're going to play that evidence for you now, and when it was provided to us, it was provided in 4 phases. You're going to hear the lead investigator's voice say, with our group, we're trying to, And after the word two, listen closely, you'll hear this strange voice from the other side. In the second phase of the recording, they play it back with some of the background noises out. They then have a third version, and finally, when you hear it for the fourth time, listen closely. We believe you'll be hearing the voice of a small child from the other side calling out, "Play with me."
Jennie Wade and her mother spent time here in the kitchen, not just preparing meager meals for the family, but also making bread for the hungry soldiers. On the morning of the third and final day of the battle, Jennie was here making biscuits. It was approximately 8 a.m. The dough tray, which was used to mix ingredients and knead dough, was in the center of the room. An hour earlier, Confederate bullets had come through the parlor windows, struck the mantelpiece, and shattered a bedpost. Fearing additional action from the outside, Jennie decided to place the dough tray in the corner of the room behind the kitchen door. She felt that she'd be safer behind these two doors. Unfortunately, a stray Confederate bullet coming from 800 feet to the north struck the outside kitchen door. It still had enough force to come through the room and pass through the second door. At that moment, Jennie was standing behind the door, bent over the dough tray. The bullet struck her in the back, and it's believed to have pierced her heart. The bullet then exited from the front of her body, and Jennie was dead before she hit the floor. After her mother examined her daughter's body, she announced, "Georgia, your sister is dead."
The Jennie Wade Museum and Ghostly Images tours suggest that visitors submit any photographs that may contain supernatural evidence. In 2006, we received a photograph from a visitor that we cannot explain. Look at the image, and you can see what appears to be a heat trail of the bullet as it passes through the interior door. The trail was not seen by the naked eye, but was only discovered when the picture was processed. This photo was submitted by Karen Matrico. Another notable photo that was taken during a ghost investigation in 2003 shows a streak of light moving over the area where Jennie died. Note that the light does not bend around at the corner as a reflection would have, but rather flows continuously across the room. Ghostly Images sets up sound-activated recorders in the house during the night to try to capture activity. On the night of February 25th, 2006, a major disturbance was recorded in this room. Listen closely. Could this be the sound of the soldiers carrying Jennie Wade's body? During the off-season, we set up video cameras and filmed the vacant house. Occasionally, we capture undisputable ghostly activity. Watch the following evidence closely, and you will not only see the chain move, but bounce upward. The door moved twice, a few inches each time, but then suddenly closed. Try to catch the glimpse of the shadow that passes across the door. Remember, the house was vacant and securely locked.
After Jennie's death, the Union troops outside heard the cries and screams coming from the family inside. They rushed in to find the body of the young girl they'd befriended lying dead on the kitchen floor. They knew the family had to evacuate, but it was impossible to do so going through either of the first-story doors, with the Confederate forces still shooting from just down the street. Their only hope was to go up the stairs to the second floor and escape through the neighbor's home, through that hole in the brick wall. The hole made by a Confederate artillery shell a day earlier could now possibly save their lives. Jennie's body was wrapped in quilts and carried up the stairs. Georgia and her baby, the mother, the brother, and the younger boy were already there, waiting to escape.
After the mother picked up the child, they went into the kitchen where the ghost storyteller told a few more stories. Then they started up these stairs. About halfway up the stairs, the girl said, "Mommy, my ankle still really hurts." Her mother stops, pulls up her pants leg, only to find a red ring around her girl's ankle where it had looked as if somebody had held on really tightly. Now the lady that was behind them called in the next day to confirm that story and to tell it to us. She also told us that when they got to the top of the stairs, that it actually felt as if somebody had taken hold of her across the thighs. She said that morning when she got out of bed, she noticed 2 red marks around her thighs as if somebody had grabbed a hold of her really tightly. Now, we believe that since the mother picked that child up, the boy was unable to get to the child anymore, so he moved to another guest in the crowd to let them know that he was here.
A few years ago, we had an older gentleman stop in the Jennie Wade gift shop one day. And we talked to him at length about the history of the house and the history of the town and the battle. And then he came to me with a question. He wanted to know if I thought the Jennie Wade House was haunted. Now, this was back before we had started the ghost tours. And it got my curiosity because I had heard and told ghost stories about the house to people around town. However, he then went on to tell me a very interesting story, and we believe it is the oldest ghost story about the Jennie Wade House, and it takes us all the way back to the 1890s. According to his story, his grandmother had lived here in Gettysburg on Baltimore Street, and as a little girl playing around town, she had met a girl who lived in this house, and they became close friends. So she would spend quite a bit of time up here, not only with her little friend, but with the family. And he said that the family that lived here had some very curious, odd stories about the building, and some of them were truly haunted. Well, according to this family story, they said that after they moved into the building, they were here only a few short months. And one night they woke up in the middle of the night and they heard some sounds downstairs in their kitchen. Now, the parents had been sleeping here in this room, the larger bedroom on the second floor, and hearing someone downstairs definitely got their attention. They heard voices, they heard furniture moving around. They described it as a commotion. Somebody was definitely in their house. Well, you got to remember there was nothing they could do back at that time. There were no phones. They couldn't dial 911. The wall that's behind me right now was a solid brick wall. They couldn't go through that way. So the only way for them to go out of the building was to go down the stairs to the kitchen, and they definitely did not want to do that. So they decided just to sit it out. Hopefully whoever was in their house, either to do them harm or maybe rob them, would simply just go away, but that wasn't to be the case. A few minutes later, they heard those odd sounds. That commotion was now coming up the stairs to the second floor. They were terrified at that point, and eventually the sound got to the top of the stairs. Now, they had 2 young boys living in the house with them, their sons, and they were sleeping in the smaller bedroom up on this floor. When the sound got to the top of the stairs, the children woke up. They ran into this larger bedroom. So now all 4 of the family members were in here wondering what was going to happen next. Their eyes by this point had adjusted to the darkness. They could see the furniture. They could see the pictures on the walls, and they could see through the doorway into the bedroom behind me. The sound turned at the top of the stairs, went through the smaller bedroom, and was now entering this room, the larger bedroom. Well, the family, you can just imagine how amazed they were and how shocked that something was coming through the house, but they couldn't see it. They could definitely hear it. They were sure it was coming to get them when all of a sudden it turned and it went towards the solid brick wall. It went over this direction, got to the wall, and then disappeared into the wall. The whole episode was now over. Well, they wanted to get out of the house. They wanted to move immediately. They couldn't afford it, so they did stay here. And they found that from time to time, over the course of the next year, it would happen again. According to the story, they then told the neighbor what was going on in their house, and the neighbor listened and then politely said, well, it happens to us too, but on our side, it comes out of the wall, goes through the bedrooms, down the stairs, and out the door on the other side. It seems that both families were having the same encounter in the spirit world, and they believe, and we believe, that it was the ghost of those soldiers that moved Jennie Wade's family and Jennie Wade's body through this house on July the 3rd, 1863. Now you have to keep in mind it was a very, very traumatic experience for everybody involved. This is where the artillery shell came through the building, came through the roof, came across and struck the brick wall behind me. It only made a hole about 15-20 inches at that point, went right through the neighbor's bedroom and out the wall on the other side. The soldiers told the family, we're going to take you up to the second floor, we're going to get you through that hole into the neighbor's house and then on to safety. The only thing was they didn't mention to the family that the hole was not yet big enough. So imagine the way that family felt up here on that floor in the heat of July the 3rd, 1863. They got up here, Jennie's corpse was lying here on the floor. The sister, she was grieving. She had that little tiny baby. The mother was probably in shock. The brother's crying his eyes out. They're up here, they're hearing the sounds of battle, cannons and muskets were going off outside. There was a big hole in the roof, sunlight's coming in, and they're probably thinking to themselves, my God, any moment another shell could hit this building and kill all of us up here. Well, finally, the hole was big enough, but it wasn't as big as it is today, big enough to walk through. It was barely big enough to crawl through. All the family members had to get on their hands and knees, crawl into the neighbor's house. Now imagine Jennie's sister, she's got a baby, only 7 days old, and there she is trying to pass it through the hole to a soldier. Then she had to get on her hands and knees and crawl. A very, very traumatic experience. Things like that can cause a haunting. We believe that this is a residual haunting. A residual haunting takes place when a ghost recreates a traumatic event over and over again. Perhaps in your small hometown, up in an old church steeple, there's a story about a lady in white who maybe appears every night at midnight. That would be a residual haunting, one that occurs in the same place, same time, over and over again. And we believe that that's what's happening here in the Jennie Wade House. The soldiers are still desperately trying to move that family from one side of the building to the other to safety in the cellar of the neighbor's house.
In this area, we have captured audio evidence of the supernatural. The following activity occurred in the winter of 2004. Could we be hearing the desperate attempts of the soldiers to open up the hole in this brick wall to allow the family to escape to safety on the other side? Over the past 6 years, there have been more than 25 ghost investigations of the Jennie Wade House. Paranormal teams come from New Jersey, Maryland, Virginia, Georgia, Florida to investigate the house. Some of them bring high-tech equipment, others nothing more than their paranormal abilities and intuition. Almost all have left with evidence that this house is haunted.
Hello, we are the Midnight Watchmen, and we investigated the Jennie Wade House on November 9th, 2007, and this is what we found.
We ran 3 cameras in the house, basement, the study, and one of the children's rooms upstairs.
I heard a number of different movements throughout the night through different areas. Along with that, we captured a lot of EVPs. Some that we could easily figure out what they were for. Others, not so much. Some disembodied voices, some disembodied sounds. Some things that we just cannot put a reason with the sound.
Hi, I'm Carol Starr.
And I'm Mark Sarrow, and we are investigators from Chester County Paranormal Research Society based in Westchester, Pennsylvania.
Over the past several years, we've had the opportunity to tour and to investigate the Jennie Wade House. One of my personal experiences happened in one of the upstairs bedrooms. I was on a tour and I noticed that the chains in each of the bedrooms started to move, side by side, and then up and down, and then alternating from room to room. One of my other experiences happened downstairs next to the Jennie Wade kitchen. I was standing in the room talking to a couple other people, and suddenly my right ankle was grabbed by a small hand.
And just recently, the group completed a formal investigation of the house, where through the course of the evening, many of the investigators, including myself, had some personal experiences, some of which included hearing voices in the house, or hearing footsteps, feeling cold spots. And in our initial evidence review and pictures and audio that we've collected from the many visits in the past, we have caught some interesting things on film and interesting things on tape, and we definitely feel that the place is active and look forward to going back.
Absolutely.
Hello, this is Suspended Paranormal Investigators. My name is Fabio Martin.
I'm Nick Lorenzo.
And I'm Andrew Sims.
Our past investigations of the Jennie Wade House have yielded evidence that suggests that the house is ripe with paranormal activity. The evidence that we have collected proves that Jennie Wade and her father are very much active in the house, even though they have been dead for over a century.
One particular photo that was important was the green vortex that we got in the living room of the Jennie Wade House. The odd thing about the photos, it only occurred when we took the photos behind our backs.
The next set of photos that we took were of our last visit to the Jennie Wade House. There are a set of 3 photos that show a mist that appears in front of the camera and travels to the right of the photographer. This is the first time we ever caught this type of activity on a photograph.
As previously mentioned, Jennie Wade is not the only spirit entity in this house. Through investigations, we know that Jack Skelly, her boyfriend, is here, her sister Georgia, her brother Harry, and a Confederate who walks these floors. Perhaps he fired the fatal bullet and is grieving at her loss. There are also the ghosts of boys from the orphanage across the street. They were mistreated by a cruel headmistress and escaped her abuse, if only for a few moments, in this house. And perhaps today they find it a safe place to return to.
In October 2003, we had a psychic lady here in the house, and she was here with our manager, and they were conducting an investigation. And as they were coming through the house, they came to this bedroom, and she stopped and said on a previous visit when she was here, she had come upon the spirits of some little boys. And on her next visit, they had wanted her to play music for them. So this time she had brought her harmonica. And she asked the little spirit boys what they wanted to hear. And they wanted to hear Dixie. Here we are in Pennsylvania in the north, and these little spirit boys wanted to hear Dixie. So she's playing for them, and she's so excited, and says they're jumping around, and the little boys are jumping on the bed. And the psychic lady, she was taking photographs of the bed, and they've got photographs of orbs all over the bed area. And then this security chain started swinging back and forth and up and down. And the psychic lady said, "Don't go." And they both felt a whoosh of cold air come out of this room through them. And as our manager and the lady made their way back down through the house, they said all the security chains were shaking as if someone had hit them on their way out. They say in the orphanage across the street where the children were abused, they say that the orphans are sometimes here in the Jennie Wade House because it's a safe place for them, and they come here and they play here. For our Midnight in the Haunted House, we fill the house with people, and at midnight we turn the lights out for 5 minutes. People love that. They take photographs and they get some really cool things. One time at the end of the season in 2006, when the lights came back on, they found something really extraordinary. They found 2 tiny handprints in the wooden floor right here. When they went to examine them, they wouldn't wipe away. There was no dirt or dust on the floor, and the handprints seemed imprinted in the finish of the wood. They stayed like that for weeks, and then towards the end of the season they seemed to fade a little bit, and over the winter months they faded completely. When the season started again in the spring, they were totally gone, but fortunately we were able to preserve them in photographs.
In 2007, we received a photograph taken by Brian Anderson. It was taken at the top of the stairwell into this bedroom. In the picture, the mirror on this wall reveals the profile of a woman. She is wearing an apron, she is bent over, and she may be holding a baby. A few years ago, the video camera was set up in this same bedroom. It was aimed through the doorway, and on the left side of the video, you will see a chain. An hour into the filming, the chain mysteriously begins to shake. Over the course of the next few minutes, the chain became very active and moved in a very unnatural manner. Here is that valuable footage, and remember that it was impossible for anyone to be near the chain. The house was locked up for the night.
One question I frequently get here at the Jennie Wade House is, Joe, have you ever seen a ghost in the building? And even though I'm here quite often doing the history during the day and working with the ghost tour at night, up until 2 years ago, I always had to answer no. I had experienced ghosts. I had seen the rocking chair move, seen doors close, chains move, even felt cold spots wandering through the house, but I had never seen a ghost. But that all changed 2 years ago as I was leading a group of school children through the house doing the history. We came through the second floor and we turned to come down the stairs behind me. And when we did, I turned the corner, looked down at this landing here, and when I did, there was a spirit of a little boy standing there staring back up at me. Had on a white shirt, suspenders, 3/4 length pants. He looked up, we made eye contact, and when we did, he disappeared off the landing. Now, I didn't say he ran off the landing, he simply disappeared off the landing. I immediately came down the stairs, the door was locked, looked around, there was no one here, and from that time on, I can truly say I have seen a ghost here at the Jennie Wade House.
This is where the family exited the house after coming down the stairs. They could safely leave through the neighbor's kitchen door. This was the Union side of the building. Outside, they could see Yankee soldiers waiting the call to action. Best of all, there were no bullets flying around here, so the family could take their time as they safely made their way to the cellar.
In the winter of 2006 and 2007, a ghost investigative team from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, discovered supernatural activity in the parlor on this side of the house. Their photographs reveal that they were not alone. In their photographs, you can see the trail of spirit energy moving about the room. This picture was submitted in the fall of 2007. In the parlor mirror, you can see a shadowy figure on the side of the room. Although we tried many times to recreate this strange image, we were unsuccessful. Some who have viewed this image have seen one ghost. Others believe they see two.
The event that happened here was on the first year of when we first started doing tours here at the Jennie Wade House, and we would do the tours up to this time, going through the main door, up through the kitchen on the Jennie Wade side, and to where we are now. There used to be a chain across the doorway behind me, and this was the first time I had a group of Boy Scouts, and because it was a large group, we had the group in two parts. So this is the first time we ever ended a group here in the Widow McLean side of the house. So this was a change. From what I understand, that spirits do not, they can resist change, and apparently that's what happened, would be the cause of this whole story. When we got on this side, and instead of going through the rooms and going down into the basement, I take down the chain, I invite everybody into the parlor here, and probably I did a no-no. I told everybody, sit down, relax, and that's what they did. Well, the one gentleman had a digital camcorder, and he's panning around the room, because apparently he must know what he's doing about looking for spirits. Well, he was focusing into this mirror, and he got an image standing at the doorway between the kitchen and the parlor. So the first thing he says to the kids is, anybody standing at the doorway, please get away. Well, everybody runs to the camera, to the viewfinder, and we saw a very good image of a man, looked like he's around 30s, standing at the door with hands on his hips. He had his feet apart. He was wearing a black trousers, black shoes, a black vest, a white shirt with a bow tie, had blonde hair, very short, no facial hair, hands on his hips. You could see his watch chain, and he's just standing there. And everybody was, needless to say, glued to that photograph. And this went on for about 5-10 minutes. And apparently, I think he was wondering, what are we doing in here? And so in a few minutes goes by, and he starts stepping side to side. We never experienced anything like that. And the kids, all but 3 of the kids were up and gone. Luckily, the door was already open, because they would have ran through the wall. They ran. Then later, the photographer was out in the parking lot, and they were all looking at the tape that he got of this spirit. And one thing I didn't tell them was, did you feel anything when you ran out of the room? As you can see, there's only one way out of this room, and that's through that door. And that spirit was standing there at that door. So literally, they ran through the spirit and to get out of here. I guess the old saying, out of sight, out of mind, goes into play.
The concept of getting ghostly images from a mirror or other reflective surfaces is nothing new. This phenomenon, known as scrying, was used by the ancient Egyptians and the ancient Greeks. They would look into a pond or a brook and see within their faces and spirit energy. This rare ghostly image was caught by Scott Guth of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. He had taken a photo of the kitchen window from the outside. When he got home and examined his pictures, he found something strange in one pane of glass. Once it was enlarged, he was surprised by what he saw. If you look closely, there appears to be 2 ghosts. One of a woman, you see her from the back, and you can see her waist, arm, shoulder, and braids of hair. Over top of the woman is a man. You can see his forehead, eyes, and nose. What do you see? Once again, we have tried to reproduce the picture, but all efforts have failed.
This is where the family ended their fateful trip through the house that day. After the soldiers carefully carried Jennie's body down the steps, they cleared off a table in the corner and set her body down. The family was now safe from the bullets and shells bombarding the area. Family was safer in the cellar, but their worries weren't over. That afternoon, not too far away, an attack took place known as Pickett's Charge. From the cellar, the family could hear the intensity of cannon and musket fire. They may have even heard the rebel yell as the charge began. As the family mourned over Jennie's body, they had no idea who would win the battle or when it would end. Fortunately, the battle was over the next day. The Confederate Army had retreated. Union soldiers returned with the casket and buried Jennie in the garden behind the home. The following January, she was buried in a local church cemetery. Years later, she would be moved once more to rest in her family's plot in Evergreen Cemetery. Today, there is a statue of Jennie Wade and a flag that flies 24 hours a day over her grave. There is only one woman in American history with such an honor, Betsy Ross in Philadelphia.
Years ago, there was a live radio broadcast down here in the cellar. During the show, the chain on the other side of the room began to move, much to the amazement of everybody. Ever since then, people seem to think that the basement is the only part of the house that's actually haunted. But as you've seen so far, that is far from the truth. But not to say that people do not have experiences down here in the cellar. Employees, visitors, and investigators have all had strange happenings down in the basement, including cold spots, voices, as well as the chain occasionally moving on its own.
Recently, a camera was installed and photographing the cellar. The cameraman left the room. The doors were chained and locked. During this time, a loud crash was heard, followed by 2 more sounds, and then a sound like a dragging noise. After about 5 minutes, this chain started rattling and continued rattling for quite a while. Later, when the cameraman returned, he had no idea what he had photographed. When this footage was discovered, the cameraman returned with other investigators to try to determine the origin of these noises. The cellar was studied and nothing was found to be out of place. Everything was as it should be. Employees were questioned, and it was found that no one was near this building at that time. Let us now present our evidence of supernatural activity in this cellar.
Many people will tell you that it's the ghost of Jennie Wade's father who haunts down here in the cellar. Unfortunately, a few years before the Civil War, he had been put away in a prison in Philadelphia for larceny. He was in solitary confinement for a number of years, and when he got out of prison, he had gone insane. Came back to Gettysburg, he couldn't do his job. He couldn't get along with friends or neighbors, so his wife, Jennie's mother, had him committed to the almshouse north of town, and that's where he spent the rest of his life. He was there during the battle. He was there when Jennie died, and after the battle, when people went out to visit, he would always say, "Where's Jennie? How come Jennie never comes to see me? Is Jennie married yet? Tell Jennie I'd like to see her tomorrow." When they informed him that Jennie was gone, he wouldn't believe it. He denied it. He would then again ask, "Where's Jennie? Tell Jennie I'd like to see her." This went on until he finally passed away, never having acknowledged her death, never having said goodbye. It does seem logical that perhaps it's his spirit that has returned here, trying still today to say goodbye, and maybe he's here right now grieving over her remains.
During a 10-hour period, a recorder was left in the cellar. During the night, it distinctly recorded the voice of a man and a child. The child seemed to be singing. Also, the historical narration came on by itself. A button must be pressed to start that narration. If you listen closely throughout the narration, you can still hear the voice of the man and the child.
Above their heads, the Wade family kept its vigil, feeling that particular unbelieving grief that all civilians must feel when war comes to their own front door. But the story doesn't end there. Wesley Tull, a native Gettysburg boy who'd gone south before the war, had finally returned home with a message from a boyhood chum to his sweetheart in Gettysburg. Wesley Tull had returned to Gettysburg all right, but as a Confederate soldier, fighting desperately on Culp's Hill, in the very field where he played as a boy, on the very hill that bore his family's name. The message he carried was from Jack Skilly, a playmate from his youth in Gettysburg, who was now a Union soldier, lying mortally wounded in Virginia, a long way from home and loved ones. Wes's regiment had fought against Jack at Winchester, Virginia, just 18 days before. When Jack was wounded and captured, Wes found his boyhood friend and promised to deliver Jack's dying words to his sweetheart in Gettysburg.
Is that the voice of Jennie Wade's father? And is that the voice of Jennie returning as a child to be with her father?
Over the past 4 years, we have received over 1,000 photos from visitors to the museum or guests on the Ghostly Images tours. We have made every effort to explain what they have photographed. Over 60% can be explained as a result of reflections, flare from a camera flash, glare from the sunlight, etc. We try to respond to everyone who sends a photo, whether we judge it unexplainable or not. Our extensive photo gallery shows the photos that we cannot explain, and it is here for our visitors to view and judge for themselves if it is truly ghostly activity. One common example of non-paranormal photo is this one. You see the odd light pattern on the rear stone wall? It certainly looks unexplainable, but it is caused by a crack in the plexiglass that protects a large historic painting in the cellar. Here is another example of that phenomenon. I discovered the cause of this phenomenon one night when I was here alone at the Jennie Wade House. I came down to the cellar around 2 a.m. in the dark. When I turned on the flashlight and the beam went across the room, I saw the odd streaks of light on the wall. When I moved the light back and forth across the glass, the reflection created on the wall continued to move, resulting in the strange illusions. We receive hundreds of similar photos each year, and I must inform the sender of the truth. It is not paranormal.
Ghostly Images of Gettysburg guides lead thousands of guests through the Jennie Wade House each year. Some are serious ghost investigators, others are just curious, and many are looking for some evening entertainment. They enter for many reasons, but they exit knowing one thing: they have all spent time in a truly haunted house.